Live from the Team 980 Window Nation Studios, it's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Here's Kevin.
Sports Betting AG released its latest odds and prop bets for the NFL season. And Dwayne Haskins is the early favorite to be benched, to be the first starting quarterback benched in the NFL this year. He is plus 150 as the favorite. And then it's Ryan Fitzpatrick at plus 225, Mitch Trubisky, before you get to much longer shots at Sam Darnold and Tyrod Taylor. Dwayne Haskins, the leading favorite and a sizable favorite to be the first NFL quarterback benched in the 2020 season. If you recall, last year at this time, Jay Gruden was by far and away, I believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, my memory is that Jay Gruden was the leading contender and the leading favorite to be the first coach fired in the NFL, and he was. When he got fired after Week 5, after that hideous loss to the Patriots, where he trotted out his favorite son, Colt McCoy. Here's the question about Dwayne Haskins, and we'll open up phone lines at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Why is he being so disrespected, shorted so much by so much of the NFL media? A lot of fans as well. I think a lot of it is from outside the market, but I think some of it is inside the market. I think and believe that the fan base is split on Dwayne Haskins. That would be my guess. I think 50% of you think it ain't going to happen, and 50% of you believe in him. I'm in that category. I believe in Dwayne Haskins. I didn't initially. I did not think he was worthy of the 15th overall pick in the first round of the 2019 draft. I didn't. I watched every single one of his games and really on some level was very intrigued with him because of the size and the arm strength and the whole thing and the fact that he was local. You know, he played at Bullis here locally. He did spurn Maryland, but there was a coaching change too. So there was justification for doing it. But I was not a massive fan of Haskins coming out as a first-round pick, definitely as a second- or third-round pick. But, you know, there were other quarterbacks, including Drew Lock, among a couple of others, that I liked more. Certainly Kyler Murray. But I evolved when it came to Dwayne Haskins because you really don't know until you see him play at the next level and to see how he leads, to see how he competes, to see how he reacts and handles adversity, to see how he gets along with teammates, to see whether or not he's coachable, to see if he throws with anticipation, to see if he's got more mobility and if he can make plays. And on almost every single front, he checked the box for me. He didn't check the box like, oh, this is an elite skill set. But, you know, to beat a dead horse, I've said it from the preseason last year on, Dwayne Haskins is a badass competitor. He was not overwhelmed at any point last year other than coming off the bench in the Meadowlands and maybe to a certain degree coming off the bench in the Metrodome in Minneapolis. When he was prepared to be the starter, he more than passed the eye test. Again, was he dominant? Was he spectacular? Was it so obvious that Dwayne Haskins is going to be a star? No. But all of the things that people were saying when he finally got an opportunity to prepare for a game and start a game, none of that stuff came to fruition. Oh, they'll never get out of the huddle. They're going to have to burn timeouts. He's not committed. He doesn't know the playbook. His work ethic is terrible. It's going to translate out onto the field into a total disaster. Callahan, old man Callahan's being forced to play him now because they're 1-8 or 1-7 or whatever their record was at the time. Should have been 0 the Miami win was a bit fortunate. I loved the way he competed. You know that. I love the way he competed in clutch situations with an urgency and an understanding of what the game situation was. I saw a guy that throws with anticipation. I saw a guy that is much more mobile than I ever thought, and he may be more mobile this year as he's continued to transform his body. He can make every throw. He's going to be a good deep ball thrower. I think we can see that. He is smart. He is coachable. We know that from the comments, comparing Old Man Callahan's comments from early when he took over the job with what he said late in the season last year, where he said Dwayne never makes the same mistake twice. Translation, he is super coachable. I'm optimistic about Dwayne Haskins. I look at this list of quarterbacks to be the first to be benched. I don't see Dwayne Haskins being benched as the first quarterback being benched. I could easily see Mitch Trubisky being benched first. By the way, how about that as an aside? You know, they go out and they trade for Nick Foles. They give him a new contract in Chicago to replace Trubisky, and Trubisky beats out Foles. It's like the only chance Foles has is late in the season when the team needs to win every game to get into the postseason, and then he's really good in the playoffs too. There's no chance that Sam Darnold gets benched unless he's hurt. Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be a really good quarterback. He's the fourth quarterback listed here with Tyrod Taylor. Now, I don't even know who do the Chargers have as a backup to Tyrod Taylor. They drafted the young quarterback, right? Didn't they draft Justin Herbert? Yes, it was the Chargers who drafted Justin Herbert. So that's a different situation, right? I mean, on this list, I think that's the guy I would bet on. I would bet on the guy where, you know, or Fitzpatrick because they've got Tua. You know, you'd bet on the veteran, one of the veteran quarterbacks being benched for the rookie quarterback that was drafted high. Dwayne Haskins doesn't have that situation behind him. Why is Dwayne Haskins so disrespected, so shorted? People are really shorting Dwayne Haskins. I was involved in my fantasy football draft a week ago. A bunch of guys from the station. Solly runs it and has been doing it for years. And I didn't really pay attention to the ratings or the rankings of all the quarterbacks. I didn't look to see where Haskins was ranked. I wasn't interested. I was more interested in drafting the best team I could draft. But I was told by somebody yesterday who was involved in like their third fantasy football draft that Haskins was like 38th on the quarterback rankings, which meant there were 5 backup quarterbacks in the NFL that had a higher fantasy rating than Haskins. I already mentioned to you the Colin Kaepernick EA Sports Madden 21 game where Kaepernick's on there in front of half the starting quarterbacks. Well, the lowest rated starting quarterbacks are Tyrod Taylor and Dwayne Haskins on Madden 21. Now, Haskins is tied for the second worst starting quarterback rating with Gardner Minshew and Drew Lock. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Why is Dwayne Haskins shorted? Why is he disrespected? The number one answer for me is that he was drafted by Washington. And furthermore, it was reported that the owner, Dan Snyder, made the pick. And then you had all of the Snyder made the pick because he went to the same high school as his own son. If Dwayne Haskins had been selected by almost any other team in the NFL, I think the view on him would be different. I think if he had been selected by Pittsburgh to be the guy to replace Ben Roethlisberger, or even in a situation where there was a better chance of playing sooner, I think the narrative on Haskins would be different. Because he got drafted by arguably the worst franchise in the sport, with the worst front office in the sport, and he was put into a highly dysfunctional situation where there was one rumor and story after another that was coming out on him, I think very fairly. I thought it was handled so piss poor by this team last year. The stories that were coming out about a young player who hadn't even played yet, it was a disgrace. Whether it was Jay or somebody else in the organization, it was disgraceful when you started to hear the stories about his work ethic being questioned, his commitment level. He didn't know the playbook. And Adrian Peterson had some harsh words for him early on, and that narrative changed with AP later in the season. I think the number one reason that Haskins is shorted by so many of the NFL insiders and analysts and Vegas is because he was drafted by this wretched outfit last year and put into a highly dysfunctional situation. Now you're in a more functional situation with a decent person in Ron Rivera, arguably the first decent person that the organization's had at a high level in a long, long time. And to me, a really good coach who isn't going to treat Dwayne Haskins the way he was treated here last year. I would be very surprised if you get stories, even if Haskins is playing poorly, with right now Ron Rivera in charge, if you get a lot of leaks about Haskins. First of all, I don't know that anybody has a big problem with him inside that building like the last group did. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We'll take calls on Dwayne Haskins. He is the odds-on favorite, according to Sports Betting AG, who released its latest prop bets for the NFL season. He is the leading favorite right now to be the first starting quarterback benched in 2020. Why is he so disrespected? Why has he been shorted as much as he's been? Your call's next. Friend of mine, I didn't look at this in my fantasy football draft, but said he was 38th. I mean, the 38th means there are 5 backups that have higher rankings than Dwayne Haskins. Why? The number one answer for me, and I didn't even have to think about it, is that he was drafted by this team. I think if he had been drafted by, 24 to 26 other teams, there wouldn't be this feeling already that Dwayne Haskins can't do it. It's the situation that he entered into, the organization that drafted him, the reasons behind the draft, the handling of him early in the season by a coaching staff that didn't want him, that led to some narratives on him and some information that came out about him that may have been accurate early on, but changed significantly towards the end of the year when he got an opportunity. Look, when you're top half of the first round draft choice, more times than not, you're going to end up in a situation where the team didn't win the year before. But very rarely do you enter a situation like the one Dwayne entered last year. It was not conducive for a guy that had started 1 year in college football, was young, and was looking for mentorship and support. He didn't get that from anybody in the organization, maybe other than the owner. Why so much contempt for Dwayne? Why is he the favorite to be the first quarterback benched in the NFL this season? Why so much disrespect for him? Sean, go ahead.
It's all perspective. I think that it's because of some of the things you actually said. It's not anything that he's done since he's been in the league. It's things that, he couldn't control. He only started 1 year at Ohio State. You got to look at the situation, like you said. Well, he's drafted. Was it a good fit? Personally, not just the whole team, but the offensive coach, the situation that he was a lame duck and all of that stuff. I also look at it in perspective. It's like he was also drafted in the same class, if I'm not mistaken, as Josh Rosen. Josh not even in the league right now. So,
no, Rosen was the year before that.
Oh, okay. Well, Rosen is now looking like a bust. But either way, I think that if, like you said, the more playing time Dwayne gets, the more he'll be able to prove himself. Some quarterbacks come in the league with a little bit of hype, and, some quarterbacks come in the league with none. Troy Aikman went 1-15 in his first year, ended up being a Hall of Famer. So the kid is a kid. He going to mature. He going to progress. He might do some big things.
Yeah. Thanks for the call. I also, and it's, a friend of mine just texted me, well, look at his numbers compared to some of the other young quarterbacks, and look at the opportunities to win games with him. Look at what was around him last year. He had nothing around him. It was a terrible football team last year. And I'm not just talking about the weapons offensively that he lacked. He had Terry McLaurin, Sims Jr. I mean, maybe these guys are going to, I liked McLaurin. The defense was so awful last year. Bad field position, opportunities when they got the ball, they got the ball too infrequently. Like, the team around him sucked. So you can't just look at his numbers. You have to have spent time, like we all did as fans of the team, watching every single one of his snaps. If you watched every single one of his snaps last year, he would not be the favorite to be the first quarterback benched. If you came away with the opinion where you said, I don't see it, I don't feel it, I don't think it's going to happen, that's different from saying after the 8 starts, he stinks. I can't imagine why anybody would have watched those 8 starts and watched the progression from the first one until the last one against the Giants where he played a half and say that he didn't make significant progress.